Well, right now I am walking outside of the village of Foix in Belgium, and we're right here on what was known as the Bastogne perimeter, where some of the most vicious fighting during the Battle of the Bulge took place in December of 1944 and January of 1945. And there were a lot of men on both the German and American sides who lost their lives here in this area. And we're going to take a little bit of time today to visit a few of the places associated with the men who lost their lives here in the latter part of 44 and early part of 1945. The spot that we are standing at right now is the location of the temporary American cemetery right here outside of Foix. Now, the actual temporary cemetery was off to the right, but they have this memorial here, and there's some pretty interesting symbolism that our buddy Reg was telling me about. So if you look right here at this spot, this is symbolic of a world that has been cut in two by war. And then if you go over here, well, you see headstones for both Christian and Jewish service members. And then here it shows a world that has been restored. And that's supposed to catch the wind and spin, but it's a little bit heavy. And then if you look right here, well, you have the American and Belgian flags. It says here lies the site of the Foix American Temporary Cemetery from 1945 to 1948. It served as a temporary resting field for 2,701 Americans killed in the action of the Battle of the Bulge, 16th of December 1944 to the 28th of January 1945. And if you measure from the bottom left corner to the top right, well, it's exactly 2,701 millimeters to basically symbolize the 2,701 Americans who were buried here. And also, these trees on either side are nut trees. So from the end of the Battle of the Bulge until 1948, this whole field right here behind me, off in the distance, was where thousands of Americans were laid to rest. And right next to them, right here, were 6,807 Germans. So this is the Foix-Racogna German Military Cemetery. And again, as I mentioned, there are 6,807 German soldiers who are laid to rest here. So if we go through and walk this cemetery, well, you can see a lot of the names of men who fought in this area. This was a collection cemetery, so not all of them necessarily fought right here in Bastogne, although a lot of them did. So here is one grave for an unknown soldier, and then another by the name of Michael Brucklochner, and then another unknown soldier. And then if we look at this grave right here, well, you can see there are 3 names listed on this side. If you look at the one down at the bottom, Heinrich Becker, he was born in 1927, died in 1944. So at 17 years old, this is one of the youngest German soldiers that is buried here in the cemetery. Here's another grave with a couple of unknown soldiers that are lying at rest here, along with a Kurt Oswald. And again, there are multiple soldiers here beneath each of these markers, and well, 6 to be exact. And I just mentioned the youngest, or one of the youngest soldiers in this cemetery. Well, here's the grave of one of the oldest, Fritz Breithaupt. Now, here's something that's kind of interesting. If you look, it says F. Kapt, so he was a frigate captain, and so it means he was a Kriegsmarine guy. His fleet had been wiped out in the Channel Islands, and he was on a plane that got shot down, and his body is buried here. But he was 52 years old, making him one of the oldest here in the cemetery. Now, as I mentioned, this is a collection cemetery, so there are German soldiers here who fought all around the Battle of the Bulge. But specifically here in the area of Bastogne was the 2nd Panzer Division. So it's very likely that many of these men who were buried here were part of the 2nd Panzer Division. And we've brought an artifact along today from a guy who fought right here in this area.
I have the soul book of a guy by the name of Zubeck, who was in the 2nd Panzer, Grenadier Regiment 304, Kampfgruppe Kokenshausen. And they were one of the units that engaged with the 101st Airborne during the Battle of the Bulge. And this particular soldier was actually captured here. And I want to bring it back here today because I believe a lot of his comrades rest here. And this guy luckily made it out. He was a POW for a while, but he survived. And it's interesting to bring a piece like this back to this final resting place of some of his comrades.